What is up, everybody, and welcome to the Blogger Bowl Week 4 college football preview. Not hyperbole to say this is the best week of the season in college football. Just looking at the schedule, we have a ton of great games. We have a ton of interesting stuff to talk about, and so we don't want to belabor that point. I'm Dan, I'm joined by Matt and Florida Phil. Joining us today. We're glad to have you, Phil, as I know it's a busy weekend for you with obviously the huge Notre Dame game and packing to move. Fellas, how are we doing today?
I'm starting to get nervous. I'm like good, but I'm nervous. The nerves are starting to set in.
Yeah, one of my favorite traditions in Chicago, especially in like a big college football weekend, is usually on Saturdays I go grab coffee, and so especially when it's a big Notre Dame game, you see a bunch of like really nervous, like tight-buckled Notre Dame fans walking around, just like
Notre Dame hoodie or Notre Dame hat, just a nod.
Just in coffee, like in getting coffee, either a nod or like a go Irish with like a voice crack. A lot of times, people are nervous, so it's going to be a great Saturday to wake up and watch college football or pack your entire house.
It is such a good week. I do want to start with something because my plan is to hopefully put this on social media and engage with them even further. I complained last week on Twitter because that's what I do. Like that's what Twitter is for, is just to complain. About well, in general, hey, look, I'm no.
I know, Dan. I know.
However, I do complain about a lot of things. One thing I complained about is, God, I love YouTube TV. I really do. I think it's a great service. However, like the multi-view thing is just the biggest tease in the world because they give you they dangle the carrot, but not the full way. So I was like, please, just give me the option to create my own multi-view. And they actually responded to me. And it was like, we put a lot of thought and effort into our offerings and we work really hard at this and blah, 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 blah. And that's great. I appreciate it. But the problem is when you preset these things, you're going to invariably end up with a game that stinks. And then suddenly one of the screens just goes to waste. So I'm asking like YouTube TV, I'll freelance for you. You don't even have to pay me that much money. Like it's fine, but like allow me to help you set some of the windows. I've even put together some for this weekend. In the noon window, give me Florida State, Clemson, Oklahoma, Cincinnati, Auburn, Texas A&M, SMU, TCU. And the reality is the Oklahoma, Cincinnati games and the SMU, TCU games could get ugly, and that's why you need multi-view. The option to customize. The 3:30 window, give me Colorado, Oregon, UCLA, Utah, Ole Miss, Alabama, BYU, Kansas. Again, that game is the expendable one. And in the late window, Texas, Baylor, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Iowa, Penn State, Oregon State, Washington State. Let me pick your customizable windows, guys, and let us pick our own windows. Nevertheless, guys, I just listed 12 games. We're going to talk about 7. There's even more that are interesting that we just don't have time to talk about. I want to launch into it. Like I said, I have 7 games I have notes on. I have 2 different narratives to that package 3 games together each, and the outlier is Iowa Penn State, which is a game for which I don't really have a narrative for. I just think it's a really interesting game. Somebody's got to win the West. Wisconsin doesn't look very good. Nobody has really looked that good. Feels like Iowa might just win it. The key stat for this game, guys, Penn State, they have not turned the ball over this season. 0 turnovers. I just don't know how Iowa is going to move the ball and score on a defense that is 8th in EPA per play defense, 5th in defensive success rate. They don't give up a lot of quality possessions, and they're good at keeping those quality possessions from turning into points. Iowa, State. Iowa, because Iowa and Iowa State are the same program at this point. Iowa is one of the best teams in the country in terms of field position. They only have 3 forced turnovers, which feels a bit on Iowa-like, but teams have struggled so far to generate scoring opportunities on them. Penn State's offense hasn't been wildly efficient yet from a number standpoint, so this feels like a slog. Again, this is another game where I kind of want to see what Drew Allar has against a good defense.
Yeah, that's what I'm going into it. It's like, is this Penn State team actually good? Put them against a good defense. See if their offense can generate like some explosive plays. It's been pretty quiet for Penn State so far. So I'm more looking at this game as, is Penn State a legitimate contender in the broader college football landscape this year? I'm not seeing it so far, but again, for Drew Allar to actually have a chance to put it up in a big spot in a big night game, a lot of the spotlight's going to be on them, and we'll see if it's like a 24-19 game, which it probably will be. And I'm really curious to see. The over-under is 40, and that's just like such an interesting.
It's such a low total for a college football game with 2
And it's like,
not ranked teams, but one ranked one.
Involving a team from the state of Iowa this week.
The Iowa teams don't really count.
I've been trying to talk myself into the over, and like I can't really talk myself into the over at all.
For me, it's just like everything Penn State does now and is just kind of getting themselves ready for Ohio State in a couple weeks and getting themselves ready for Michigan. So we haven't seen it yet from them, but I do think that potential is there. They clearly have the home run potential out of the backfield. And Drew Aller, like we've seen some, granted not as much this year as we probably like we've seen some flashes of the arm talent and that he does give them a little bit more when he's at his best than Sean Clifford did. This is, like you guys have said, another example for him to do that. I kind of don't smirk when I say Sean Clifford, Phil. I'm not sure they're going to go out and put up a ton of points, but I just kind of want to see him to keep progressing, maybe see a few more home run plays from the running backs break out for a bigger night. But it's an Iowa defense. It's going to be really tough, and I think Iowa's given 14 and a half. Like, I think that's a lot of points for a game that's got a total of 40. And while the offense in Iowa isn't good, it is better than it was last year. I don't know. I think Penn State kind of wins this one somewhat comfortably, but in a low-scoring game that Iowa's defense can get them back into it, at the snap of fingers in one play. But I don't know. It seems like a pretty boring game to me that Penn State just kind of controls the whole way.
Phil, your internet's crapping out.
Oh, he's freezing.
Phil's internet.
No, you're coming back. You're coming back.
No, we got
Maybe.
you. No. Phil,
no. He's switching to the hotspot, isn't he?
Yeah, you guys switch over to the hotspot, Phil. Do that. And I will set us up as we move on to the best conference in all of college football. The Pac-12 has 3 absolute bangers on the schedule this week. Probably the least interesting in terms of like what might actually happen on the field is the biggest game in the Pac-12 because it involves Coach Prime and his boys from Colorado hitting the road to Autzen Stadium where they're a 21.5-point dog with a 70.5-point total at Oregon. The coaching and equipment staff have been blasting music in the Oregon fight song during practice. It's that level of detail that makes Coach Prime great. I don't know if you guys saw that tweet from one of former Colorado student podcast was tremendous.
Yeah.
So
there have been some hilarious follow-up tweets mocking that one too.
Oh, for sure. Congrats to Coach Prime. I have now twisted my brain into a pretzel thinking 21.5 might be too many, but I don't think I would take them. So now that everyone thinks that Colorado is going to get blasted, the question becomes, okay, how do they hang around in this game? And it's going to have to be with a bend but don't break defense. Colorado is 112th in quality possessions allowed and 121st in points per quality possession allowed. So simply put, guys, they allow teams to move the ball and then score. Oregon is 7th in quality possessions, generated 16th in points per quality possession. So as you would expect with what we saw from this offense last year under Bo Nix, they are very good at creating offense and finishing drives. It's just unlikely that Colorado is going to keep the Oregon passing offense from moving the ball. They just have to keep Oregon to field goals instead of touchdowns. A bigger problem for Colorado is that the vulnerability Oregon has shown on defense is in the run game and not the pass game. We know how good Shedeur Sanders is. We know the limitations of the Colorado offense is really only if you can get him on the run. He is, I think they've lost the most yards to sacks of any team in college football, has Colorado. So it's the same old story. It's how are their lines going to hold up? Obviously, Travis Hunter not being there limits both sides of the ball for Colorado. I've kind of would like to, just for like all of the chaos and craziness that this story has created, this to be an interesting game, but it just really kind of feels like this is where teams are going to kind of start taking stuff out on Colorado. Like the hype has been so out of control with Colorado. You have to think that some of these good Pac-12 teams are kind of licking their chops to take a swing at the Buffs.
Yeah, and they saw the crossers offense of Colorado State. It's just like
that's all they ran. There was no adjustment.
Have anybody drag across the field. And what I'm curious about mostly is, and I was talking to Dan about this before we started taping, but is the loss of Travis Hunter going to have more of an impact on the Colorado offense or the Colorado defense and allowing Oregon to generate points? So for me, that's a pretty big option because you're losing your bailout freak athlete on offense, but you're also losing one of the best cover corners in America. And so for me, it's like, I think that is more going to hinder the Colorado offense when it boils down to it, because Shedeur Sanders is going to have less time. The Oregon defensive line and linebackers are going to be coming after him aggressively because they've obviously struggled in the blitz pickup. And so with that, not having someone who you can bail you out in terms of freak athlete is going to pay dividends. So I also feel, Dan, as you mentioned, the troll game that I think the rest of the Pac-12 is going to want to do in terms of if they start scoring, they're going to want to keep scoring. They're going to want to mock Colorado, I think it's awesome. Like, right. I think it's incredibly good for college football because it gives people one, like more rivalry because they've been getting all the attention. Now their defense isn't good. And so I think Oregon will roll in this one. And I'm actually going to go with the under in this one. It's sitting at about 70 or 69.5 in a couple spots. I don't think Colorado can put up near the amount of points that they put up last game. I think they're, again, not going to get like shut up by any means, but I think they're going to put up 20-ish points, and I don't see Oregon necessarily getting over 50. But it could be a situation where Oregon is up big and then puts the pedal on the gas. I think what they'll probably do is I think they'll get up and then try to slow the game down at the end just to make sure that they're not getting in a weird shootout situation late, in which Colorado is, moving down the field quick, 2-minute drills. I think they're going to slow it down at the end to not allow any momentum shifts.
Yeah, I don't see how Colorado doesn't just get kind of bullied in this game. And I think Shedeur Sanders is a really good football player. I think he's a really good quarterback. I think he's going to make some plays. But we saw a Colorado State team who is one of the worst in FBS, like give them a ton of problems, get after the quarterback, run those shallow crossers that they just had no answer for. Like we're not talking about a Colorado State team that's like, going to be an 8 or 9 win team. I've been joking, but seriously, I'm going to tell myself at the end of the year, like trick myself into betting on Colorado State throughout the year because that one game they played really well at Colorado. But this Oregon team, like they're incredibly talented. Dan Lanning is a very good head coach. They have an offense that can put up a ton of points. They have a defense that can get after you. This is by far the best team that Colorado's gone up against there without their, if not their best player, one of their 2 best players in Travis Hunter. And I don't see how this doesn't go pretty badly for them. I hope Shedeur Sanders still has a pretty good game. I hope he comes out of this one healthy, but I think it's going to be a long day for him, not because he's going to play bad, but because he's going to get hit a lot.
Yeah, if I sacked him, I'd flex my fake Rolex. I would have nothing on there, and I would have like a piece of string, and I would flex that up.
I might pretend to drive the Rolls Royce over him.
One thing, Oregon replaced most of their offensive line. That was one of the best offensive lines in the country last year, at least so far against pretty mediocre competition. That offensive line has performed very well, 7th in the country in sack rate allowed. So if Colorado can't generate pressure on Bo Nix, he's just going to pick them apart. Or Oregon hasn't been great at rushing the passer. Or Colorado's offensive line is a get-right spot for everybody there. Another awesome game in this league. We have UCLA on the road in SLC against Utah. Utah 4.5-point favorite. Total of 51.5. This game was kind of eye-opening last year at the Rose Bowl. Zach Charbonnet had 198 yards. DTR had 5 passing touchdowns. And it kind of flipped what we always thought about the Utah defense on its head. But because they're Utah, they figured it out. And I'm sure how bad the defense got gashed last year has probably been brought up a few times at practice this week in that game. I am so excited to see Dante Moore in the cauldron of an environment that is SLC. It is the most obvious thing in the world. UCLA is going to want to run the ball to keep the pressure off of him. Fun little thing. UCLA has 4 running backs with at least 10 carries this season who average at least 8 yards per carry. So like they're very multiple at all.
Pretty good.
The number of weapons that they have. They need to stay ahead of the chains. They run 71.5% of their plays on standard downs, which are first downs, 2nd and 7 or fewer, or 3rd and 4 or fewer. And basically what that means is like plays where you can either run or pass the ball. If Utah gets them into obvious passing situations, that feels like that's going to be a very, very, very bad situation for UCLA. As far as Utah is concerned, we
getting Cam Rising back?
The spread,
no, not likely.
The spread to me at 4.5 indicates that they think that's Cam Rising is going to play. There's some gamesmanship going on there. I've heard he's taking snaps. I've heard they're going to see how practice goes today. If he doesn't play, it makes that game even more interesting because I don't like betting against Utah in SLC, but like their quarterback situation has just not been great. And they might just have to lean on the run there. But this game, super fascinating. Phil, what do you think?
Well, I think even if Cam Rising comes back, you're not yourself your first action back, right?
If there's an environment you could be again, it would be at night in Salt Lake City.
It's true, but I'm gonna go with I don't think he's going to play. Again, there's definitely some gamesmanship. They've been a bit cagey. I think there was a quote yesterday where it was like, yeah, he practiced and you'll find out on game day. So definitely like up in the air, but even if he plays, he's not going to be fully there. So I think Dante Moore steps up in a huge moment. I mean, I think he's kind of made to be a college football star. So I'm really excited to see him under the lights in Salt Lake City. So I'm going to roll with, I think, who's going to have the more talented quarterback on the field and go with UCLA in this one.
Man, it's 5.5 points, did you say, Dan?
4.5.
It was 4.5, I think, the last time I looked. I can look now real quick.
Man, it's not that big of a deal. Part of me wants to side with you, Phil, and go with UCLA, but like there's been so many spots where like UCLA's had this chance to kind of, do something different on the road or beat a good, and it just seems like they kind of always once or twice a year lay an egg in a weird spot like this. Granted, they do have Dante Moore now, who's no offense to DTR, like DTR is a very talented quarterback, but Dante Moore is a big 5-star prospect who's been playing really well all year. I can't go against Utah at this point. I don't know what the situation is with Cam Rising, but I know what they're going to do. I know they're going to play a tough defense at home. I know they're going to try and run the football. They're going to try and control the clock. Weird stuff's going to go in their favor. Some weird bounces are going to go their way. And that's just a really, really tough spot for a true freshman with a roster that is talented, but like one that's kind of coming off a loaded year last year. So I lean Utah, but I am intrigued to see if Dante Moore can like be that dude in a tough environment as a freshman on the road against a rival.
It's going to be a tell the truth moment for UCLA, which I think everyone is excited for. And I think looking at taking a step back, one of the major themes for me this weekend is like tell the truth. Like a lot of teams, we're going to figure out like who is actually good this weekend, which it always takes 4 or 5 weeks in college football to figure that out, and it's the best, right? Because who can actually play this year.
The other game in the Pac-12 this week, the Pac-12 championship game this weekend, as Oregon State and Washington State, the only two teams in the Pac-12, go head-to-head in Pullman. Oregon State, a 2.5-point favorite, the total 56.5. I just want to enjoy this game, guys. I have no idea what to make of it. Is this the diametric opposition of vibes to the Colorado State game? Sure, for like the 60 minutes that they're playing, they're going to want to beat each other up, but this feels like a game that is going to be about respect, given everything that's gone on around these programs. I don't know if you guys saw, but they're going to fly an Oregon State flag with Ole Crimson at College Game Day this week. Just kind of as an act of solidarity there. Oregon State faces their first real road test. Sorry, San Jose State. Without the explosive plays, DJU was pretty mediocre throwing the ball against San Diego State. So, remember he had that great start against San Jose State, but it's kind of slid backwards a little bit. Washington State has been shaky against the pass, but good against the run, and the run game is the strength for the Oregon State team. On the other side, we talked about in the preseason how Cam Ward was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the country last year. Wisconsin sacked him 4 times and had 13 tackles for loss. Oregon State has a 10.84 sack rate, which is 11th best in the country. Man, this is going to just be fun. I think it's going to be a physical game, and I'm interested to see if Washington State can match the physicality of Oregon State.
Yeah, I'm curious. I wish they brought a Pac-2 trophy to this game. I would make one.
Trophy.
This seems like almost like the anti. I know I said on the show Tuesday that I wish this was on Pac-12 After Dark, but this is like the opposite of what you usually get in a Pac-12 After Dark game. Like usually you expect like a 55-51 type game where it's just back and forth track meet. Like this is going to be like Oregon State's going to try and run the ball. Can they run the ball against Washington State? Can they protect the football? Can their defensive line get after Cam Ward? This is just such a the opposite of a prototypical Pac-12 football game. And I'm really excited to watch it because these two teams have had really good starts. And Dan, I know you said DJ had not his best start against San Diego State after 2 strong ones. I want to see if he can bounce back against what's, a pretty good football team and a quarterback in Cam Ward that's had a very good year to start the year. It's going to be a fascinating quarterback battle and really just a fascinating battle all around between these two teams. And quite honestly, whoever wins this game is clearly still very live to make a Pac-12 championship run. These aren't just 2 cute stories that are ranked. These are 2 football teams that are that are good enough to win the Pac-12 or at least get themselves to a Pac-12 championship game. So it's a massive game for both teams. And Phil just fell asleep on me. Oh. You froze with your eyes closed.
That's
hilarious.
He froze with his eyes open for me.
The strange thing for me, Matt, as you said, is turning in this game in the third quarter and it's not going to be 37-33.
No, it might be 13-10.
Yeah, which feels icky, right? You pull up the score and this must be wrong. I think DJ Moore is just a big middle of the road quarterback. I don't think his ceiling has much.
DJ Uyunglele.
DJU.
Yeah.
You just combined DJU and Dante Moore into one person, which would be pretty awesome.
You said DJ Moore.
DJ Moore.
I glitched. I glitched. I froze. No, so DJU, I think he is just a big average quarterback, right? He has the big arm, but he had his first coming out game against Notre Dame where he like lit the world on fire, and since then he's just been an average quarterback with a big arm. And I don't see him suddenly making more jumps. I mean, he looked good to start the season against a bad team. I just don't think he has the upside to really be, again, why I like the under in this game, right? It's just I think it's going to be a slugfest. I think Oregon State is just, I don't really see them as a true contender in the Pac-12, and I'm just basing it off of not having that elite quarterback play versus the other elite quarterbacks in the Pac-12. Regardless, again, as I said before, tell the truth to see which of these teams can step up in one of these moments. It's still going to be a big game. I'm excited to see, like, do they celebrate a Pac-2 victory? I hope so, right? And I think they should. And after the games, like, how does it feel being Pac-12 champions, et cetera, et cetera? Like, I would absolutely lean into that. And I'm curious if Game Day will have some signs about that too.
They might, but I can't imagine Game Day. I mean, other than the flags, I don't think there's going to be much presence there. I mean, since it's in South Bend this week. So the other kind of narratives this week, I think is kind of an interesting thing, guys, because Phil and I were talking off the air, Matt, before you popped in the room. Like, I think if you were to say, okay, who are the 5 dominant programs in college football over the last 10 years, you would say Alabama, you'd say Ohio State, you'd say Clemson, and then I think in the last couple of years, Georgia absolutely is like now become the dominant program.
Yeah.
And Michigan, by virtue of their ownership of Ohio State the last couple of years, they have entered that conversation. But Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State all face kind of like foundational shifting games this week to differing degrees. Obviously, Ohio State's very good, but there's a lot at stake in that game. But Clemson and Alabama are kind of in a similar situation. We'll save the Notre Dame game for the last game because it's the big game of the week, guys. Where do we want to go? Do you want to do Alabama? Do you want to do Florida State, Clemson?
Dealer's choice.
All right. I was going to do chronological, but I do think the Florida State Clemson game is more interesting. So we'll go Alabama.
I hate that's 11 a.m. They need to talk to me before they schedule times.
I love it because that spreads out the 3, like that spreads out that game. And I mean, it could be at 3:30.
That needs to be under the lights in Death Valley.
No, it doesn't, because it's the same time as the Notre Dame game.
I'm not going to watch either. I'm going to be tailgating, so who cares?
Nevertheless, Alabama 7-point favorite, the total 55.5. Guys, this is a double Saban former assistant revenge game. Not just Kiffin, but Pete Golding got kicked to the curb. He goes to Ole Miss. The 3 teams have allowed a higher sack percentage than Alabama this year in all of college football. Kent State, Old Dominion, and Air Force, which has attempted 10 passes this season. I wonder if Tommy Rees has any wrinkles to take advantage of Jalen Milroe's mobility, move the pocket, get him throwing on the run, tailor an offense to suit what he does well. Interestingly enough, weirdly, Ole Miss has not been good running the ball. Quinshon Judkins is only averaging 3.3 yards per carry in their bottom half of the country in rushing metrics, but Jackson Dart has been very good so far. They're 4th in points per quality possession. Can Alabama limit the big plays? That's been their only real weakness on defense. Like, we've talked so much about how bad the Alabama offense has been. We kind of have skipped over the fact that their defense has, to this point, been as advertised, aside from a handful of big plays they gave up against Texas. So this is really like, we're going to find, you talk about tell the truth games, man, we are going to find out a lot about what Alabama has. You guys know, I've talked about it on the show, I'm not a big Kiffin guy when it comes to big games like this. I think Lane Kiffin is like shown he's more interested in being like the meme god, troll god coach instead of a coach of a national championship caliber program. I don't think Nick Saban hates him at all because he won him a national title, but I do think that of all the former assistants, it's undoubtable that that Kiffin annoys Nick Saban the most. So this is going to be a game where Alabama is going to kind of want to elevate their level. I just don't know if they can. There's a possibility that this team just ends up being fairly mediocre.
Kiffin seems like the kid in the locker room, like Saban's locker room, that like bothers him, like annoys him, pisses him off, but is also like his favorite kid. But he still loves him. He loves him. He still laughs with him, and like he yells and screams at him all the time and gets so mad at him. But at the same time, like at the very end, after this like rant where he's yelling about how he's dumb, like can't help but smirk because Lane Kiffin makes him smart crack. Like that's how I feel the Saban Kiffin relationship is. Does he hate him? kinda, but also like he really does really respect him and like him.
Yeah, and it's tough for me, it's tough to ever like actually vote against Saban. Like I thought
Yeah.
Texas was going to beat them, and they did. I think switching to Buckner and Ty Simpson and not bringing in Jalen Milroe at all during the South Florida game was bizarre. It was a driving rainstorm, awful weather. The passing game wasn't getting started, so you think they'd want to insert their elite rushing quarterback, and they just never did that. And so I thought that was a very bad sign that they didn't bring him in. So I didn't think he was going to get the start again this week. So the big thing here is how does he respond to a moment in which he, didn't play great against Texas, but still made some plays. And a quarterback did not make a play for Alabama on Saturday, and he sat on the sideline. So it'll be very telling to see the relationship that in a very short period of time that Tommy Rees has with his quarterbacks. Will he respond positively? Will he play angry? Will he play aggressive and make mistakes? But in situations like this, I've learned just don't bet against Saban, right? I don't know the stats, but I'm sure he hasn't lost 2 out of 3 games, maybe ever. I think there was a situation where maybe he lost like 2 in a row at the end of the season into a bowl game. But in terms of losing 2 in a row, I just don't see him doing that. I'm not counting last week at South Florida. I mean, that was but if essentially losing 2 out of 3
home games in a row, at least
2 home games in a row, it just makes me not want to bet against Saban at all. Especially as you said, Dan, I don't really trust Lane Kiffin in these big moments. I don't think he's going to do anything to shoot himself in the foot in terms of like get your popcorn ready or anything like that. Still a legendary quote, but I'm going to roll with Saban here. Take Alabama on the points at home. I think they don't light the world on fire, but they win by like 10 to 14 points in this one.
Yeah, it feels like a 31-20 type Alabama win. I think they're going to play better. They have to. And Dan, you said it, the defense has actually been kind of fine this year. And if they can't get anything going with Quinshon Judkins, which weirdly enough, they haven't been able to all year. Like I don't trust Jackson Dart. I don't think Jackson Dart's done anything against like very good competition during his time at Ole Miss. And I don't think he's going to be able to go into Alabama and beat, like what we said, has been a very good defense so far this year, or at least a solid one for the most part. And I think Bama's offense does get back on track at least a little bit with Jalen Milroe. I'll go down with I'm not saying Bama's going down. I'm not saying the dynasty's over yet. I still think there's time for them to regroup, if not this year. But I think Nick Saban, if he wants to, if he still has the energy, can adapt. That said, whenever that ship does go down, I'll be going down with it because you don't get rich betting against Alabama, and that theory's done me pretty well for a long time. So if it's one bad season of doing it, I'll still end up being just okay with it. Like I'll happily go down with the ship there. I'm not going to be the first one to jump off Nick Saban and Bama. I think they take care of business at home. Kind of like Phil said, not like the most impressive win, but they control it and they win something like 31-20, 34-31, or 34-21. Something.
And with like an elite quarterback, this is a game that they come and win by 35, right?
Yeah.
And without it, I think it skews significantly less than that, but they're still going to get it done.
I feel like it's like last year's game that's going to come down to the end. I really do. 7's a good number. Like, God.
Is there a chance that, and I don't think this is going to happen, but like, what are the odds that like this is a game that at halftime we're just like, whoa, and Bama's offense looks absolutely terrible. Ole Miss finds the run game, and they're not blowing them out, but it's like 14-3 Ole Miss at halftime, and it's like,
then it's the panic. I think then the panic button, the national panic.
That's when I would allow. That's when I would be like, all right, maybe the ship is down.
What would be? What do you think is more likely to happen? Either that, like a 14-3 situation, or Alabama being up like 28-3 going into the half.
Oh, the only thing that would surprise me is like Ole Miss by 50 or Alabama by 50. Like Ole Miss winning like 28-17. I don't think that's an unrealistic kind of
expectation. It's definitely not.
The way that this Alabama offense has looked. I really don't think that. So like 14-3 Ole Miss at halftime, I definitely think is in the range of outcomes here. And like until Alabama proves to me that they can win it, like I'm not betting it, but if I was in like a picks pool or something, I'd probably take the points with Ole Miss until Alabama kind of shows me that they can put together 4 quarters on offense that are somewhat competent. Like they can hit the big plays. That's the one thing we saw against Texas. They had a couple of big plays there, but otherwise did not do a ton.
I'm interested to see too if Ole Miss goes up 7-0 early and maybe Alabama goes 3 and out, like what does that stadium feel like?
Yeah.
Because that stadium enters a territory that they have not been in since Nick Saban's first year, since his first year as head coach at Alabama. Like there are gonna be people in that stadium that weren't born the last time that feeling was in that stadium. So that's gonna be
I think the
again, I don't think that's gonna happen, but
they put I think they put like a small some like kindling under Tommy Rees's chair and just have someone who's like kind of like ready to just.
Do you think Tommy Rees, if he got a chance to do it all over again, would have stayed? Knowing what he knows now.
I mean, I just wouldn't have gone to Alabama knowing that quarterback situation, knowing the pressure.
Yeah. Well, did he leave before Hartman committed, or did he leave after?
Yeah. Hartman was already there in the building because I remember they released.
He was the one who brought Hartman to Notre Dame. Yeah, so he convinced Hartman to come to Notre Dame to play in his offense.
That's interesting. All right, the next big game of this triumvirate of foundational shaking games: Florida State at Clemson. Phil's Noles are a 2.5-point favorite on the road. The total is 55.5. Let me just go into some of the stats, things that stand out to me. Clemson, 4th in EPA per pass play defense, but 53rd in defensive success rate passing, which basically what that tells you guys is they are very good at forcing turnovers. They have 4 interceptions, 7 turnovers total, but Jordan Travis only has thrown 1 interception. They've been really good at keeping teams from turning good possessions into touchdowns. One thing, though, that's really bizarre, guys, they are second, and this kind of underscores how bad their offense has been, or like how inefficient. They are second in the country in field position and 112th in quality possession created, which
that's
is
not
insane.
Good.
It goes to show you. So, like, from a statistical standpoint, there's a lot of stuff out there, but to me, I just can't escape like the bigger picture stuff, because it really feels like Clemson is going to need some bring your own guts, little old Clemson magic bullshit to win this game.
But Dabo can get that out of them.
Of course, Florida State has been kind of coasting since the LSU game, but if you look at these rosters, Florida State has the better quarterback, they have the better receivers, they have the better offensive line, and they have the better defensive line. Dabo Swinney has been the megachurch pastor of college football for a number of years now. He legitimately believes that like God has ordained him to be a great football coach, and that all of this success is ordained from a higher power. I'm not joking. I'm not trying to be blasphemous. That is how he acts. And he has stubbornly failed to adapt to the times. He won't use the transfer portal at all. He's been resistant to NIL. And as you've seen, the quality of their roster, particularly compared to Florida State, seems that there is a gap there in terms of at least the quality of what they have at most of the key positions. His number one usurper is at the gates of his church, ready to burn it down. The Clemson Foundation is shakier than it's ever been. And Florida State, guys, like, to me, I just objectively, unless Clemson can just play keep away, don't know how they win this game.
Yeah, and I think looking at the line, people are probably like, "Oh, well, Florida State struggled mightily against BC." It was.
I don't get the spread. I don't get the line. That's what they're.
It was
all time.
I know that was look ahead, but I don't get this line. That's because Dan, I'm with you, but then I see Vegas opens it at 1.5, Florida State -1.5, and I know it's on the road, but like, I don't get that, because if you look at the talent across the board, I know Clemson has played better the last 2 weeks, but they played nobodies. Like they rolled over nobodies, and and Duke is a better team than we thought they were in that opening game against Clemson, but Duke kind of just didn't even play that well against Clemson and won 28-7. Clemson shot themselves in the foot throughout most of that game, but that's what Clemson's been doing. They've been shooting themselves in the foot as a program for the last few years now, and you look like Florida State's roster is really, really good. I'm not like the Boston College game doesn't really worry me, because it was the halftime was close, and then they came out, start the second half, and went up. They're up 31-10 in a blink of an eye, and then went into cruise control. Then Boston College kind of came. So like I was able to still see they have that extra gear when they need it, and then whatever, Boston College made a comeback because Florida State shut it down. Everything in my gut tells me Florida State's going to win this game by multiple touchdowns, but I just don't. I don't understand the spread. I don't understand what Vegas is trying to tell me.
Yeah,
I guess if I did understand what Vegas was trying to tell me, I'd be very rich.
Yeah, right now it's like it's almost, you look at it like it's like the what am I missing line, right? It's like there's it's someone like mysteriously hurt or anything like
that. Is
it
a trap line or a gift line? I don't know.
No, but I think they're just trying to prey off the national narrative that Clemson will be Clemson, and I just don't think Clemson is Clemson. And I think Florida State obviously had a letdown spot a week ago, but it was probably the most obvious letdown spot of all time. And, any team who's coming off playing the Holy Cross Crusaders, the competition seems light. So, Boston College was like, man, we've seen true team speed before. So this Florida State offense and defense looks pretty pedestrian. So I understand that, right? But jokes aside, I think this game is not close. Like, you go with your head and your heart, and it's like my head is like absolutely hammer Florida State, but there is still the creeping doubt. Like, well, what if Dabo does?
I think we'll know early.
Yeah, you'll know.
I think we'll know early in this one. It's either going to be 14-0 at the end of the first quarter, and Florida State's driving, or Florida State hasn't done anything, and Will Shipley's running the ball well, and Clemson's up like 3-0, but dominating time of possession, something like that. Like, I think we'll know pretty early in this one.
I saw a prop bet. I think it was like 66.5 yards rushing for Shipley. Like, I think he gets that. Like, I think he's the lone bright spot in their offense. But like, who steps up for Clemson's offense, which has been struggling against a very good defensive line and very good secondary speed? Like, I just don't see that happening.
Go get him, Cade.
So what the line is telling you guys is a couple of things. Obviously, like you factor in home field advantage. It's telling you that Florida State's a 5.5 point or a 5-point favorite on a neutral. Clemson's the pure talent level on the Clemson roster is very high, even if it hasn't been developed into the kind of force that we're used to seeing from Clemson. Also, priors are still very, very important in college football handicapping, and that's why Clemson is always going to be valued highly, and the spreads are never really going to match what you see with your eyes with Clemson, and maybe that's going to be the case here. One thing, though, as I kind of now have thought about it a little bit more listening to this, and just in my head, it's like Florida State was really, really sloppy in the first half against LSU in a game that was skewed was a home game essentially. Like, there were a lot of LSU fans there in Orlando, but it was an LSU or it was a Florida State home game. So they're going on the road in a place where it's going to be loud, it's going to be hostile. Dabo's going to do the whole preacher bit and try to get them fired up. So how does Florida State handle that early in this game? Because that's kind of going to be the equalizer. If the mature version of Florida State that showed up in the second half against LSU plays 4 quarters in this game, I think they're going to blow up Clemson out of the water in this game. If the kind of sloppy, mistake-laden team that played the first half against LSU shows up, then that, like I said, that little old Clemson, bring your guts bullshit is very much in play here. So just how they weather the environment early, like is the maturity that they showed against LSU going to carry through, or is it going to be something that like, hey, maybe we need to tap the brakes a little bit on what Florida State is going to bring to the table here? So moving on to the big game of the weekend, Texas, they visit. No, I'm just kidding. It is Ohio State. It is Notre Dame in South Bend. Ohio State, 3.5-point favorite, total 54.5. Guys, I wrote down notes. I'm not going to give you my notes because I have some overarching stuff I want to talk about at the end of the discussion. I'm going to lay out to the two guys here who know this Notre Dame game and have thought way more about this game than I have, to tell me what they expect to see happen. And then I have an overarching thought about this whole thing that I want to get to. But you guys duke it out. I don't care who goes first. Tell me what you guys, as Notre Dame fans, but smart guys who are also who can think objectively, what do you think is going to happen? What are we going to see in South Bend on Saturday night?
Yeah, two huge key things for me.
My feet up here. I'm just listening.
That's fine. It's like when you talked about Texas Bama. I just kind of sat back and drank water.
What I'm most curious to see is Kyle McCord. Does he come out and is he a game manager and pedestrian, or does he take a step up? Does he look very good? Does he look elite? Because that is, if you look at last year, that was the difference in that game. But it was a very, very, very wildly different talent gap between quarterbacks. And so last year you had CJ Stroud versus Tyler Buckner. Tyler Buckner didn't really do anything in that game. We saw who he was last week. Bring in Sam Hartman. Notre Dame has, on paper, a wild quarterback advantage. But if Notre Dame can make Kyle McCord a pedestrian or average kind of quarterback in this game, which he might be because we don't know yet, right? And so if they can get pressure on him, if the moment can be a bit big for him under the lights with the pressure, and all reports so far of them have been, or Ohio State fans have been struggling to get tickets to this game, which goes wildly against the trend that Notre Dame Stadium has seen over the past few years, which included a red wave in terms of Georgia taking over the stadium. Cincinnati taking over the stadium. It's a situation where Notre Dame has been way too friendly to opposing fans in terms of giving them tickets. I believe they've learned their lesson. They're going a full green out in this game. They have light up green wristbands to go nuts to have a light show in the game. I think this environment is going to be probably the hardest and most difficult home environment Notre Dame has had since the 2005 USC game. Now, I don't think it's necessarily the most hostile environment Ohio State will have seen by any stretch of the matter, but for Kyle McCord, it absolutely will be. So how does he function under the lights? That is something I'm absolutely watching. The next step is how Notre Dame's offensive line performs against Ohio State defensive interior, because Notre Dame's two tackles,
tackles will be fine.
Tackles will be fine, but how do their guards perform in a big spot against some meaty guys, which ultimately will impact Audric Estime. So there's so many factors that go into this game. Yeah, you know what? let me speak how
sorry. It was funny. I do, but sometimes that makes me laugh.
Yeah, you know what? So that's just me. So there's so many factors that go into this game. My heart and my head are telling me all different types of things. I'm not betting this game. I'm staying away from it. I'm even staying away from the emotional hedge. It's a situation where at the end of the day, I think Hartman will be the difference. And if it comes down to a dueling performance between Hartman and McCord, I'm going to go with the 6-year guy. And so I'm going to pass it to Matt because I've just been rambling, and I have some more thoughts. But Matt,
Well, yeah, we'll get. I'll tag in.
Let's volley here.
I'll tag you out, then tag you back in. I feel weird that I feel this confident. Not that Notre Dame's going to win, but like that they're going to belong in this football game. I'm so used to going into these types of football games as a Notre Dame fan that like, all right, can we hold on? Can we show up? Can we maybe steal a turnover in the fourth quarter and steal a football game? This is the first time in a matchup like this for Notre Dame that they're going in with, on paper, the very clear quarterback advantage. That's nothing against Kyle McCord. He's been he's not great in the opener against Indiana, but he's been better the last couple of weeks. But like, this is the first time that Notre Dame's had this quarterback advantage. So they're going to have to take advantage of that. They're going to have to use it. This is going to be the best defense. Sam Hartman's been great. It's probably going to be the best defense Sam Hartman has gone up against, maybe with the exception of one of the Clemson defenses he's gone up at some point in his time at Wake Forest. But Phil, like you said, it's going to come down to Notre Dame's going to say North Carolina for some reason. Notre Dame's offensive line protecting Sam Hartman. It's going to come down to their defensive line getting some sort of pressure on Kyle McCord and giving their corners, not forcing their corners to cover Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka forever. Because I do think for the first time in a long time, too, Notre Dame has two corners that can cover those guys. Benjamin Morrison, he's not Marvin Harrison Jr. caliber, but like, he's going to be a possible first-round draft pick in 2 years.
I'm going to interrupt for just a second. With all due respect, I don't think there's anybody in the country that can cover Marvin Harrison Jr., but go on.
No, you know what give themselves a chance to consistently, I'm not
get cooked for 4 quarters.
Yes. That's what when we're talking about Marvin Harrison Jr., who is, I think, the best football player in the country. That's what I mean. It's going to give them a chance to do some covering on those guys. And like you said, Phil, this is a new environment for Kyle McCord, but it's also a little bit of a new environment for Sam Hartman. Sam Hartman's going to be at home and juiced up. Like, he hasn't been in this before either. Yes, he's played in Notre Dame Stadium, but it was against Tennessee State and Central Michigan. Sam Hartman, and I trust him to be, this is 50th college football start, which is a wild statistic, but his 50th college football start, I trust him to, calm things down, take a little bit of a deep breath. I love his head coach for this moment, because I think if there was a different head coach that were in charge, he, they say players take on the personalities of their coaches. I think it was a different head coach, you might get a little riled up, but I think the head coach that Marcus Freeman is, he's done a very good job getting his team ready for these big time games, these primetime showdowns, and they've either won them or put up a good fight in them in games they aren't quite the more talented team. So I trust them to trust Sam Hartman to come out cool, calm, and collected, but that's going to be an important factor because he's going to be juiced up. Like you said, the green out, the green lights, the home stadium, shipping up to Boston to start, the green jerseys, everything. Like, he's going to have to be the adult on the field. He's going to have to be the on-field coach. He also can't let that get to him, because if you get overjuiced, you start overthrowing footballs, you start trying to do too much. He's got to play within himself. Yeah, but I do think for the first time in a while, I'm not saying Notre Dame's going to win this football game. I think Ohio State being a 3-point favorite is fine. But for the first time in a while, like, Notre Dame belongs in this football game. It's not, can Notre Dame pull off the upset? It's, will Notre Dame win? Like, those are two very different things.
And the one thing I'm going to say, the reason that I've been talking myself into a Notre Dame win is you look at in Notre Dame fans, what we call BK PTSD. which you go into the big games.
I brought that up. Yeah, you heard me talk about that for a minute there.
And it's what you look at in Notre Dame and the difference going into this big game versus big games over the past 10 years. Notre Dame has never had elite secondary. So you look at the games that they've played against Clemson. They've looked at the games that they've played against Alabama. The huge clear difference has been the wide receivers versus like 3-star cornerbacks versus 5-star wide receivers. Now we have 5- and 4-star cornerbacks versus 5-star receivers. So those matchups aren't nearly as lopsided as they've always been in the past. You look at the quarterback position. It was Ian Book, who was a very solid college quarterback, not an elite level college quarterback who couldn't see the field well. Last year, it was Tyler Buckner in this situation. So they haven't had elite cornerback play. They haven't had elite quarterback play. And they also haven't had necessarily like a great, like, I don't say great wide receivers because Notre Dame doesn't have great wide receivers, but they have wide receiver depth, which I think is very important in this game as well. Because previously, Notre Dame has always had maybe an elite wide receiver, one guy. You get a Chase Claypool, you get a Miles Boykin, you get an Equanimeous St. Brown, you get a high-level top-end wide receiver. Notre Dame doesn't necessarily have that on the team this year, but they roll with 7 guys who can all play, and Sam Hartman can distribute the ball. So the fact that they have wide receiver depth, they have a lot of running back depth and speed. They have currently the best running back in the country right now with Audric Estime, who has 120 more yards than anybody else. He's averaging over 8 yards a carry. So the fact that they can be really balanced, they have depth, and they have defensive speed against an inexperienced quarterback in a hostile environment. You take all those factors, and my brain is absolutely telling me Notre Dame. My heart is hedging itself because I'm preparing myself to get sad. I'm going to have a stressful day of packing all day leading up to this moment. I might even turn off all the clocks in my house because I want the day to go faster. I cannot wait for this game. I'm absolutely going to be picking Notre Dame to win this game in my heart. I'm not betting it, but my official prediction is Notre Dame to win in a very close game that gets decided in the fourth quarter.
So I don't have much to add in terms of this, but I do want to just say one thing. When you say Notre Dame doesn't have any elite wide receiver, that kind of does worry me, actually. I appreciate the fact that they have a lot of depth there, but this is going to be kind of one of those games where like big time players step up in big games kind of situation, and I wonder what they're going to do there. I don't have anything to add X's and O's otherwise, but the guy who I am like most interested in, and it's really two guys who I'm most interested in this game, are the head coaches in this game, because I think you have two coaches whose general philosophy on football is relatively conservative. And I like Marcus Freeman. I think Marcus Freeman has the potential to take Notre Dame to another level as a program. And so, for a lack of a more appropriate adult way to say this, I really just want to see Marcus Freeman let him hang this weekend. Like, this is the kind of game where every little thing is going to matter. One extra possession, one extra set of downs. Don't get conservative in this game. Trust that this quarterback, who has started 50 games and has played in a ACC championship game, which is not as big a game as this one, I don't think, but is a bigger game than Kyle McCord has ever played. You have 2 NFL caliber starting tackles. Let your guys go out and make plays. Be aggressive. Trust your offense. Trust the structure that you have on defense. Go out and take it to Ryan Day, who himself is also a coach who skews conservative. This is for Notre Dame. Like, this is a prove you belong game, because if they win this game, you cannot deny that this is a team that is in the playoff conversation, right? We talked about like the LSU Florida State game, the winner, their margin for error being, extending. Same for Texas and beating Alabama. Notre Dame's schedule and coming up, they have Duke, they have Louisville, they have USC, they have Pitt, they have Clemson. They win this game, they still have a 1-game margin for error that if they could potentially lose to a USC and still make the playoff. So if you win this game, and if you lose this game, obviously you have to run the table against all of that to make the playoff. So you have margin for error if you win this game, and it is undeniable that if Notre Dame wins this game, and I'm with you guys, I absolutely think they can win this football game. If they do, they are undoubtedly a playoff contender. So I hope you guys as fans don't leave this game wondering, man, what if Marcus Freeman had just made that 1 4th down decision or done that one other thing? Let them hang and see if you can hang on the field with the Buckeyes.
No sad punts. If Notre Dame goes into this game, I think legitimately that's going to be a big stat that I'm watching, is because I can see Ryan Day being at the 42-yard line and punting it. I can also see Marcus Freeman being at the 42 yards and punting it, but don't
So
do
the difference
it
is with
game.
Freeman, at least this year, Phil, the kicker's name, I'm blanking on it.
Spencer Schrader.
That's right. I keep thinking of Blake Grupe still because he's now kicking for the Saints. But they trust Schrader's leg. They let him kick from 54. He against NC State, I think it was. He made it. He's got the leg. Like, I don't think Marcus Freeman's going to shy away from letting him kick from 55 yards, 56. Like,
I don't think
the kid's got the leg.
I don't think they should. Like, I think even that for me is conservative, and it's, I think if it's 4th and 8, right? But if it's
that's what I'm more saying.
If it's 4th
and 3 from the 42, I think you're
go for it every time, and I think
because you have a quarterback you can trust to make that throw. You don't have Drew Pine, who's hopefully tossing one to Michael Mayer and hoping he comes down with it.
Yeah, one quick prediction. I think this will end up being a very big game for freshman Jaden Greathouse of Notre Dame. And the reason behind that is that I don't think Notre Dame is necessarily going to have the over-the-top shots. What he has shown so far is the absolute ability to find the soft spots in the coverage, sit down and catch everything his way. So look for him, in my opinion, to have anywhere from like 5 to 7 catches for like 46 yards, right? He's going to have a bunch of 6 to 8 yard catches that I think are going to be huge in this game. And so what that'll do is it'll hopefully soften up the linebackers a little bit, which will allow Estime to get some room. But Jaden Greathouse, from a wide receiver standpoint, true freshman, is one of the keys to the offensive in this game.
All right. So before we get into our bets for the week, I do want to do my quick history lesson for the week because there's something that's happening on Saturday that's very cool that I wanted to bring up. So I just decided to roll it into my history lesson. Saturday, guys, Kansas hosts BYU in their Big 12 opener, which is still a weird thing to say, BYU Big 12 opener. It's just the second all-time meeting between the programs. In 1992, Kansas ended an 11-year bowl drought as they went to Honolulu to face BYU in the Aloha Bowl. BYU had an 8-point lead heading into the fourth quarter, but Kansas outscored the Cougars 11-0 in the final frame to win 23-20 to get their first bowl win since the 1961 Blue Bonnet Bowl against Rice. Starring for Kansas on defense that day was Kwame Lassiter, who had 12 tackles and a pass breakup. Lassiter went on to play 10 years in the NFL. In 1998, he retired, in 1998, he tied an NFL record, intercepting 4 passes against the Chargers. He worked in radio from his retirement until his untimely death in 2019. So why bring up Kwame Lassiter in a random bowl game in 1992? Because, guys, following in his footsteps at his alma mater is his son Quentin, who already has 2 interceptions this season for the Jayhawks. And who might he have to defend at times on Saturday? His brother Darius, who has 9 catches for 116 yards and a touchdown this season for BYU. So it's a very cool thing for the Lassiter family, brother against brother in a game. Just the second time these two programs have ever faced each other. A very cool thing that I thought I would bring up. Bets, I have 5 on my card. Matt, how many do you have? Phil, how many do you have?
I have 5.
I only have 4 right now, but obviously,
Matt always goes last.
I always go last because I like adding.
Phil, you start us off. What are you betting this week?
First off, Florida State 2.5. Colorado, Oregon under 69.5. Nice. Alabama.
Ooh, it's at 70 on DraftKings. I'm doing you a favor.
Okay. Even better. I saw it 69.5.
I know, I'm helping you out.
That half point. Alabama minus 6.5. Washington State plus 3. And then North Carolina minus 7.5 against Pitt. Pitt's awful.
Yeah, that's weird. That's a weird line. For me, go ahead.
That game feels like North Carolina, like they're better, but like they just seem to have these weird spots where they should win by a lot, and then they just play gross and still win. But it's like gross.
Georgia is 7.5. This for
7.5.
This has like Georgia Southern vibes last year, where it was like the spread was like
yeah, it might have been
or something. I'm like, wow, they're gonna blow them out of the absolute water, and then they won by like 6.
Yeah.
Gross. I brought up 2 of mine. The other day. I took Auburn plus 7.5 against Texas A&M, just not laying 7.5 with A&M. South Carolina minus 5.5 at home against Mississippi State. Mississippi State is terrible. Guys, give me Oregon first half minus 11.5. Minus 134 at FanDuel, so it's juicy, but I think they're going to be up by 14 points or more. South Alabama, fresh off a just curb stomping of Oklahoma State, laying 15. That's a lot, but they're playing Central Michigan. I don't think they're very good. I think South Alabama is a contender in the Sun Belt. And then the last one, guys, I'm still so fucking mad at Jay Norvell. I also think this is a bad schedule.
I was going to take this one too.
I think it's a bad schedule spot for them too, like traveling across the country to Middle Tennessee off an emotional loss. It's just 3. So give me Middle Tennessee minus 3 at home against Colorado State. Matt, what are you betting?
I am going with, I got Florida State minus the 2.5. Like we said, I think they have themselves a pretty easy time in that one. I really like them in that spot. I like Oregon's first half line that I added to my card as well, Dan. Middle Tennessee State, right? Yeah, laying the 3.
Yeah, Middle Tennessee.
What was my last one? I have Notre Dame on the money line. I'm taking it. I can't. I have to absolutely bet it. Why am I blanking on my last pick? Where is it? I had it, but I lost it. I'm dumb.
Oh.
Whatever. We'll pick those 4. I'll tweet anything else I like.
Awesome. I thought you said you had 4.
Those were my 4.
You said you had 4.
Yeah, so you didn't forget one. You just had 4.
Oh no, that's right. No, wait. Here's my 4. West Virginia plus 6 at home against Texas Tech. Because I added your Oregon first half.
Gotcha.
West Virginia's played pretty decent football.
I
think they played pretty good football at home. Like they've been frisky, and I think Texas Tech. I know they played well at home against Oregon, but they've just kind of been not as advertised so far this year. So I like West Virginia at home. If this was a road game, I wouldn't touch it. But they play frisky at home.
They do that. They do. Well, that's going to do it for us, Phil. We appreciate you finding some time in the work schedule to join us. Good luck with the packing this weekend. Good luck to both of you, and just hope that your nerves stay calm. I know I'm a nervous wreck for games, so I'm just hoping that you guys have a healthy Saturday leading up to the game. Good luck to everyone out there. Hook 'em horns. Go Irish. Good luck with your bets. We'll be back next week to break down everything that happens in this awesome week of college football. We will talk to you later.